there's no evidence that would point to this alternative dimension. We just believe it because like we want to hang on to the God concept. Once you get rid of the God concept, there's no point in believing in this weird extra dimension. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It just the fact that we even have these discussions and seem to have some sense of something outside of ourselves, which I'm not saying that's worth any warrant. I'm just saying it's strange that we all share that desire. Again, we share a lot of desires, but for
Hmm.
me, it just seems like fine tuning in the universe and where information somehow um, gets organized from what we observe with
Find
science. It seems
what
just strange
what's
that
finely
it could.
tuned.
What's finely tuned?
I don't see a finely tuned universe.
Well, what about gravity?
What about it?
If if slight, if it was any, if there was any variance, then we wouldn't be here talking.
Wrong. We
How's
don't
that
know that.
wrong?
You're suggesting that there's there's two problems with your argument. One is you don't actually know what the variance is, right? You're saying if it was any different, we wouldn't be here. But as it turns out, that's not entirely true. The gravity on the moon is 1/6 weaker because of its mass. Theoretically, we could have a gravity universally that's 1/3 weaker, and it would result in something, right? We don't know what it would result in, but it would result in something. But the second part of the argument is that you're assuming that the intention, the purpose of the universe has to be life. But that assumes a creator. That assumes that there's something that is granting a purpose to the universe. But why? I don't think the universe has a purpose.
I wouldn't say assumes the creator. I would say it would be evidence to lead towards an intelligent agent of some sort.
Why? What the fact that we exist has nothing to do with whether or not the universe is finely tuned. If the probability of life evolving from the universe is anything but zero, then it means it has to happen. You can't stop it.
If the universe is infinite, which it
If
looks to be.
right. Yeah. If the universe is eternal and infinite.
Well, Hawking doesn't believe it's infinite.
Well, Hawking disagrees with what you're about to say. He redacted his statement on time shortly before he died in one of his lectures. And he's also dead, and science has moved on since Hawking.
Well, I'm just saying there are other scientists who believe that there could be evidence that the universe has a starting point.
What would be the evidence, though?
I mean, even if it did, I don't see how that would be evidence for theism or deism. And if there's so many problems with the fine tuning argument. If the universe is finely tuned for life, then life is an inevitable consequence of the universe. Life requires, there's no miraculous explanation required for life. That makes a universe with life indistinguishable from, or that makes a universe created by God indistinguishable from a universe not created by God, because life is an inevitable product anyways.
I would also add, with the fine-tuning argument, the problem that you're going to run into is you're assuming that if fine-tuning is a thing, that means it's a thing because God created the universe with some form of intention, right? Like he didn't just do it willy-nilly. But if that's the case, then why did he shit the bed when he get to the earth? Why did he get to the earth and he's like, well, children are going to get bone cancer, women are going to die during childbirth, natural disasters are going to kill 100,000 people a year. Seems like an awfully big oversight when you're involved in all the fine-tuning.
Well, that brings up a whole other can of worms, which is the problem of evil and suffering.
Well, I don't think you're going to like the way this conversation goes because I think the can of worms makes your God look even worse.
Yeah, but we don't even have to go there. Life is not subject to a different set of physics than the rest of the universe. So if the universe is finely tuned, then that means that the universe is finely tuned for black holes. And so, okay, God wanted black holes to exist. This whole human beings thing is just kind of like, I don't know, I mean, it happened, but whatever. Black holes are the real intention of the God. Because at the end of the day, Justin's already alluded to this, but you really just kind of have to beg the question and say that we exist is evidence of the conclusion we're looking for, which is the reason we exist.
Sorry, say that last part again. Explain that final part.
The circular reasoning involved in it. You're saying the universe, because you're saying the universe is finely tuned with the intention of life existing, and we know this because life exists, and we observe the universe, and then we read into the point of that, the telos of us existing, which unfortunately is the conclusion we're searching for. So it's circular.
Well, I guess I don't see it quite like that. I see it as trying to use science to observe everything that we can in search of potential answers for the origin of life. And there just seems to be so many things, whether it is, the physics stuff that we can observe that, seem that there's some sort of potential tuning, whether it's nuclear force, electrons to protons ratio, all the way down to, single cell organisms and how did the first single cell replicate itself. There seems to be a need for organized information in order for these things to happen, and that
but that's true for the existence of stars and cow farts too, because the laws of physics apply to them the same way that they apply to us.
So does it apply to cow farts?
Yeah, they're not subject to a different laws of physics. The constants apply to everything.
But my whole point is, how did they get into that position potentially?
Well, we don't know that, but what's
we know about the
unknown
cow farts.
isn't evidence for.
I do know the cow farts.
Yeah, we know how those come to be. It's lots of fermentation, but anyways, yeah, what we don't know isn't evidence, isn't positive evidence of a claim.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying let's look at the evidence and let's continue to look for answers.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, that's fine. I just see fine tuning as a conclusion. It came about from a conclusion in search of a explanation, which is not scientific in any way.
Right. Like if you're looking at the universe and you're saying, what does this evidence lead you to? To me, it doesn't lead me to a God. I see a universe full of chaos, which is pretty well explained in our model. It's not explained well in your model. You have to invent reasons why God would create the chaotic universe to be chaotic.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you touched on in that. I think, here's what I was going to say. Sorry, I lost my track. It's not like I'm trying to start with the answer. I'm not trying to be unscientific. I think since we do observe fine tuning in things that humans have created, and since we do observe it with science, it could be a potential explanation. We're not trying to just punt to.
Well, let's try a specific.
You're retrofitting. You're
Right.
like Karl Popper. He sort of coined this term pseudoscience, and what he said pseudoscience is when you do this, when you do retrofitting. He really didn't like psychology because he said what he thought of was so much of what he saw in psychology was people fitting in explanations, which may be logically consistent and make sense, but they always do it with the facts already in mind, with absolutely no experimental apparatus or with no methodology. It's just always the retrofitting. So this is why, like, when I hear people say that this is scientific evidence of God or anything, because we could just plug in aliens and it works the exact same way. And I think the aliens explanation is actually more parsimonious because it requires fewer assumptions. But nobody, I think, really actually agrees that anything we see actually is evidence of aliens or simulation theory, because those are unknowns. And so it's just retrofitting.